It's a quiet evening in Sari, a coastal city in northern Iran, sometime in the early 2000s. An elderly man, let's call him Hossein, is sipping tea in his modest home, a smile on his face. He's newly married, his heart full of hope. His bride, Kulthum Akbari, is younger, charming, with a warm laugh that makes him feel alive again. She hands him a glass of juice, her eyes soft, her voice soothing. "Drink up, love," she says. Hossein takes a sip, then another. The room starts to spin. His chest tightens. His vision blurs. He tries to call out, but his voice is gone. Kulthum watches, calm as death, as he collapses, his body twitching, foam bubbling at his lips. She doesn't scream, doesn't panic. She waits, counting the minutes until his breathing stops. Then, with a cloth, she wipes the glass clean, steps over his corpse, and starts planning her next wedding. This wasn't a one-time thing. For over 20 years, from 2001 to 2023, Kulthum Akbari wove a deadly dance across the cities of Sari, Neka, Mahmudabad, Babol, and Qaem Shahr. Her victims? Men, mostly elderly, wealthy, and lonely, lured into marriage with promises of love, only to meet a gruesome end. She'd slip blood pressure pills or sugar into their drinks, sometimes just enough to make them sick, sending them to the hospital to build a medical history. Then, when the time was right, she'd up the dose, watching as they choked, convulsed, and died. The hospitals, the neighbors, even the police saw nothing suspicious. After all, old men die, don't they? Heart attacks, strokes, it's natural. Except it wasn't. Kulthum wasn't just a wife. She was a predator, a black widow who turned love into a lethal weapon. When she was arrested in 2023, the truth clawed its way out. Her 82-year-old husband had died, and something about it didn't sit right with the authorities. Under interrogation, Kulthum didn't just confess. She unraveled a horror story. 11 confirmed kills, maybe more, possibly over 20. She'd had 19 official marriages and 18 concubine relationships, each ending with a dead man and a fatter bank account. The dowries, cash, property, gold, were a prize, and murder was her method. This wasn't passion or revenge. It was cold, calculated greed, wrapped in a smile that could charm the devil himself. Who was this woman? How did she get away with it for so long? And what kind of mind could kill again and again without a shred of remorse? Let's go back to the beginning and find out. Let's start with the crimes, because they're the heart of this horror, and they're as brutal as they are clever. Kulthum's method was simple but diabolical, a slow poison that left no trace. Picture one of her victims, an 80-year-old widower named Reza, living alone in Babol. He's got a nice house, some land, a pension, perfect for Kulthum's radar. She meets him through a matchmaker, maybe a friend, spinning a tale of being a lonely widow herself, looking for companionship. Reza is smitten. She's in her 50s, still striking, with dark eyes and a way of making him feel young again. They marry quickly, a small ceremony, and she moves in, bringing with her a suitcase and a secret. For the first month, everything's perfect. Kulthum cooks his favorite stews, listens to his stories, laughs at his jokes. But then one night, she hands him a glass of pomegranate juice. "It's good for your heart," she says, her smile disarming. Dissolved in the juice are blood pressure pills, maybe clonidine or atenolol, crushed into a fine powder. Reza drinks it down, unaware of the danger. Within hours, he's dizzy, his pulse racing, his blood pressure spiking. Kulthum plays a concerned wife, rushing him to hospital, holding his hand as doctors stabilize him. "He's been under stress," she tells him, her voice dripping with fake worry. The doctors nod, prescribe more meds, and send him home. Reza's grateful, thinking she saved his life. But Kulthum's just setting the stage. Over the next few weeks, she keeps dosing him, small amounts at first, building a pattern. He's in and out of the hospital, his health declining, but no one suspects foul play. Old men have heart problems, right? Then, when she's ready, maybe 2 months into the marriage, she cranks up the dose. One evening, Ray's is sipping tea, the same tea she's made every night. This time, it's laced with enough pills to stop an elephant. He starts to sweat, his hands shaking, his breath coming in gasps. Kulthum watches, her face blank, as he clutches his chest, his eyes wide with panic. Foam forms at his mouth, his body convulses, and then silence. She checks his pulse, waits a few minutes, then calls for help, sobbing crocodile tears. By the time the ambulance arrives, Ray's is gone, and Kulthum's already packing her bags, the deed to his house tucked in her purse. This was her playbook, repeated across northern Iran for 2 decades. She'd marry, kill, collect the dowry, and move on, a ghost slipping through towns like a plague. Her victims range in age, some as young as 60, others pushing 90, but they all had one thing in common: wealth. Cash, property, jewelry. Kulthum didn't care, as long as it was hers when the dust settled. She used drugs like blood pressure meds or sedatives, easy to get and hard to trace, especially in elderly men with existing health issues. Sometimes she'd suffocate them after they passed out, pressing a pillow over their faces to make sure they didn't wake up. The suffocation left no marks, no evidence, just another natural death. The body count is staggering. When arrested in 2023, Kulthum confessed to 11 murders, but investigators suspect the number could be over 20. Her 19 official marriages and 18 unofficial relationships, all with men who died, point to a killing spree that might rival Iran's worst serial killers. She operated in 5 cities, each a hunting ground. Sari, where she was based; Neka, a smaller town where she blended in; Mahmudabad, a coastal city with wealthy retirees; Babol, bustling and easy to disappear in; and Qaem Shahr, where she found her last victim, the 82-year-old whose death finally tripped the wire. Each kill was a masterclass in deception, a performance so convincing that neighbors, doctors, and even families mourned with her, unaware they were grieving next to a monster. The scariest part? She got away with it for so long because she was invisible. In Iran's patriarchal society, a charming widow raising a disabled daughter was above suspicion. She played the role perfectly: devoted wife, caring mother, pious Muslim. But behind the veil was a predator, one who turned the sacred bond of marriage into a death sentence. How did she become this way? What kind of life twists someone into a killer who can poison a man and sleep soundly next to his corpse? Let's go back to her roots and find out. Kulthum Akbari was born in 1967 in Mahmudabad, Babol, a small village in Mazandaran province, northern Iran. It's a place of green hills and tight-knit communities, where life revolves around family, faith, and tradition. Kulthum was one of several children in a working-class family. Her parents likely farmers or laborers scraping by in a region known for rice fields and fishing. Details about her early years are scarce. Her story only came to light after her 2023 arrest, but we know she grew up in a conservative, religious household, steeped in the values of Iran's Islamic Republic. As a girl, she would have been taught to be obedient, modest, a future wife and mother. But even as a kid, Kulthum was different. Neighbors later recalled a girl who was quiet but cunning, always watching, always calculating. Her childhood wasn't a fairy tale. Mazandaran in the 1970s was tough for many. Poverty was common, and girls had few opportunities. Kulthum's family wasn't wealthy, and she likely felt the sting of wanting more than her village could offer. Some reports suggest she was married off young, possibly in her teens, a common practice in rural Iran. Her first husband, whose name is lost to history, may have been her first victim, though there's no proof. What we do know is that by her 20s, Kulthum was a widow, free to remarry and already learning how to use her charm to get what she wanted. She had a daughter, born with disabilities, who became both a shield and a tool, Kulthum used her as a prop to gain sympathy, telling suitors she needed a husband to provide for her poor child. By the 1990s, Kulthum was honing her craft. She moved to Sari, a larger city where she could blend in, and started targeting men older, lonely, with money to spare. She'd approach them through matchmakers, mosques, or family connections, presenting herself as a pious woman seeking a stable home. Her pitch was irresistible. She was attractive, in her 30s by then, with a soft voice and a story of hardship that melted hearts. Men saw her as a second chance at love, a companion for their twilight years. They didn't see the predator lurking behind her smile. Kulthum's life between marriages was a carefully constructed lie. She lived modestly, avoiding flashy displays of wealth that might draw attention. Her daughter, whose name hasn't been released, was her constant companion, a living alibi who made Kulthum seem selfless. But behind closed doors, Kulthum was amassing a fortune. Dowries from her victims, cash, homes, land, piled up, and she invested wisely, keeping her tracks covered. She wasn't reckless. She didn't drink, didn't party, didn't flaunt her gains. She was a ghost, moving from one town to the next, leaving only gravestones in her wake. Her arrest in 2023 came after her 19th official marriage to an 82-year-old man in Qaem Shahr. His death, ruled a heart attack at first, raised suspicions when a relative noticed Kulthum's haste to claim his property. Police dug deeper, uncovering her string of marriages and the eerie pattern of dead husbands. When confronted, Kulthum didn't flinch. She confessed, her voice steady, detailing 11 murders with a detachment that chilled investigators. She even introduced herself to the camera during her arrest, as if starring in her own twisted reality show. But who was she, really? How does a woman become a serial killer in a society that barely acknowledges female criminals? Let's get inside Kulthum's head, because that's where the real horror lives. This isn't a woman who killed in a fit of passion or madness. She was a predator, calculating and remorseless, with a psyche as cold as a winter grave. Psychologically, Kulthum fits the profile of a psychopath, though no official diagnosis has been released. Psychopathy is marked by a lack of empathy, manipulative charm, and a knack for blending in, and Kulthum had all three in spades. She could charm a man into marriage, poison him without a flicker of guilt, and cry at his funeral like a grieving widow. That kind of emotional detachment is rare, especially in women, who are often socialized to nurture, not destroy. Her motives were rooted in greed, but it's not that simple. Kulthum grew up in a world where women had little power, especially in rural Iran. Marrying well was often the only path to security, and Kulthum twisted that cultural norm into a deadly game. Each marriage was a transaction, love for money, trust for death. She targeted men who were vulnerable, exploiting their loneliness and desire for companionship. This wasn't just about cash. It was about control, about bending the world to her will. Every dowry, every property deed, was a trophy, proof she was smarter than the men who underestimated her. Narcissism likely played a role. Kulthum's brazen confession, her camera moment during her arrest, suggests a woman who craved recognition, even if it came with handcuffs. She saw herself as untouchable, a mastermind outwitting doctors, police, and society itself. Her ability to kill for 20 years without suspicion points to a grandiose self-image, a belief that she was above the law, above morality. Yet she wasn't delusional. She knew exactly what she was doing, planning each murder with surgical precision. That blend of narcissism and clarity makes her terrifying, a killer who didn't just act, but orchestrated. Her daughter's disability added another layer. Kulthum used her as a prop, a way to gain sympathy and deflect suspicion. But did she love her? Psychopaths can mimic affection, but true attachment is rare. It's possible Kulthum saw her daughter as a tool, a means to an end, just like her husband's. Or maybe in some twisted way, she justified her crimes as providing for her child. Either way, Her daughter was a constant in her life, a shadow who witnessed her mother's double life without ever speaking out. Kulthum's gender is key to her story. In Iran, women are rarely seen as threats, especially in conservative regions like Mazandaran. She exploited this, weaponizing stereotypes of the dutiful wife and mother. Her charm, her piety, her tears, they were all part of the act, a performance honed over decades. She understood the system, hospitals that didn't question elderly deaths, police who didn't suspect women, families who trusted her, and she played it like a chess master. This wasn't just murder. It was a psychological war, one she waged with chilling success. Let's break down how Kulthum pulled this off, because her method was as brilliant as it was horrifying. Each murder was a carefully choreographed act, blending chemistry, psychology, and theater. Here's how it worked, step by step, with enough detail to make your skin crawl. Target selection. Kulthum didn't pick her victims randomly. She hunted them like a lioness stalking prey. Her ideal target was an older man, usually 60 or older, with wealth and no close family to ask questions. She found them through community networks, mosques, matchmakers, even word of mouth in small towns. She'd pose as a widow or divorcee, often claiming she needed a husband to support her disabled daughter. Her story was a perfect hook. She was vulnerable, relatable, and just attractive enough to spark interest. Men like Reza, with property or savings, were her bread and butter. She'd researched them first, making sure they had enough assets to make the kill worthwhile. The courtship. Kulthum was a master manipulator, tailoring her approach to each man. She'd spend weeks, sometimes months, building trust. She'd visit their homes, cook for them, pray with them, playing the role of the perfect wife-to-be. She'd talk about her hard life, her daughter's needs, tugging at their heartstrings. The men, often lonely widowers or bachelors, fell hard. Marriage followed quickly. Sometimes a formal Neka, sometimes a temporary concubine arrangement under Islamic law. The dowry was non-negotiable. Cash, property, or gold, handed over before the wedding. Kulthum made sure the assets were secure before moving to the next phase, the poisoning. Kulthum's weapon of choice was drugs, blood pressure pills, sedatives, or even sugar in high doses for diabetics. These were easy to obtain in Iran, where pharmacies were less regulated, and elderly men often had prescriptions. She'd crush the pills into powder, mixing them into drinks like tea, juice, or milk. The initial doses were small, just enough to cause dizziness or nausea. She'd rush the victim to the hospital, playing the frantic wife, ensuring a documented medical history. Doctors, seeing an elderly patient with heart or blood pressure issues, rarely suspected poisoning. This step was crucial. It made later deaths look like a natural progression. The kill, after a month or two, when the victim's health was fragile and the dowry was hers, Kulthum would strike. She'd prepare a lethal dose, maybe 10 or 20 pills, enough to overwhelm the heart or nervous system. She'd serve it in a drink, watching as the victim sipped, unaware of the death sentence. In their cup the symptoms were brutal. Sweating, shaking, chest pain, foaming at the mouth. Some victims convulsed, their bodies fighting the overdose. If the drugs didn't finish them, Kulthum would sometimes suffocate them, pressing a pillow over their face as they lay unconscious. The suffocation was silent, leaving no bruises, no evidence. She'd wait, checking for a pulse, then clean up, wiping glasses and disposing of any leftover drugs. The cover-up, Kulthum's acting skills were Oscar-worthy. She'd call neighbors or doctors, sobbing, claiming her husband had collapsed. By the time help arrived, the scene was perfect. A grieving widow, a dead husband, and a medical history that pointed to natural causes. Hospitals rarely performed autopsies on elderly men, and police had no reason to suspect foul play. Kulthum would attend the funeral, veiled and tearful, then quietly collect the dowry and slip away. She'd sell properties through intermediaries, keeping her name off records, and moved to the next town, ready to start again. Key cases. While specific victim names are scarce, we know Kulthum's pattern through her confession. Her last victim, the 82-year-old in Qaem Shahr, died in 2023, likely from a massive overdose of blood pressure meds. Another victim, a 75-year-old landowner in Neka, was suffocated after passing out from sedatives. His death ruled a stroke. In Mahmudabad, a retired merchant died after weeks of heart trouble, leaving Kulthum his beachfront villa. Each case followed the same script: charm, poison, profit, repeat. Kulthum's ability to evade detection was her greatest weapon. She exploited Iran's medical and legal systems. Knowing autopsies were rare and women were rarely suspected, she kept her kills spread across multiple cities, avoiding patterns that might alert police. Her daughter's presence added a layer of protection. Nobody questioned a mother caring for a disabled child. For 20 years, she was a phantom, a shadow leaving only death and dowries behind. Kulthum's downfall came in 2023, when her luck finally ran out. The death of her 82-year-old husband in Qaem Shahr wasn't her sloppiest kill, but it was the one that broke the dam. His family, suspicious of how quickly Kulthum moved to claim his assets, tipped off the police. The man's death certificate said heart attack, but a relative insisted on an autopsy, a rare move in Iran. The results were damning. Traces of clonidine, a blood pressure drug, at levels far beyond his prescription. The coroner flagged it as possible poisoning, and investigators started digging. They didn't have to dig far. Kulthum's marriage history was a neon sign. 19 official husbands, all dead, plus 18 unofficial partners, also deceased. Police in Sari, where she lived, pulled records from hospitals, registries, and property offices, uncovering a trail of suspicious deaths stretching back to 2001. Each victim had a similar profile: elderly, wealthy, dead within 3 months of marrying Kulthum. Medical records showed patterns of hospitalizations for heart or blood pressure issues, followed by sudden deaths. Property transfers linked to Kulthum's name sealed the deal. She'd amassed a small fortune, far beyond what a widow should have. When police arrested her in late 2023, Kulthum didn't bother denying it. She confessed to 11 murders, her voice calm, almost proud. She described her method: drugs, suffocation, the hospital ruse, with chilling detail, as if recounting a recipe. She even smiled for a camera, introducing herself like a celebrity, her confidence unshaken. Investigators were stunned, not just by the body count, but by her detachment. They suspect the real number of victims could be higher, possibly 20 or more, but many cases are hard to prove without exhumations, which are rare in Iran due to cultural taboos. The investigation revealed how Kulthum exploited societal blind spots. Iran's patriarchal culture meant women were rarely seen as threats, especially not a mother with a disabled daughter. Hospitals didn't question elderly deaths, and police lacked the forensic tools to detect subtle poisonings. Kulthum's mobility, moving between cities, kept her off the radar, and her dowry profits were laundered through property sales, leaving no clear trail. If not for that one suspicious relative, she might still be out there pouring poison and planning her next wedding. As of April 18, 2025, Kulthum Akbari's legal fate is still unfolding. Iran's judicial system is notoriously opaque, and details about her trial are sparse. After her arrest in 2023, she was charged with multiple counts of murder, though the exact number remains unclear. 11 confirmed, with more under investigation. In Iran, murder carries a death penalty, often by hanging, especially for serial killers. If convicted, Kulthum could become the second confirmed female serial killer in Iran's history, after Man Qadiri, who killed 5 women and a man in 2009. Her trial, likely held in Sari or Tehran, would be a media sensation in Iran, though state-controlled news keeps a tight lid on coverage. Kulthum's confession makes conviction almost certain, but Iran's courts often delay sentencing in high-profile cases, especially for women, due to public fascination. Some reports suggest she's being held in a women's prison in Mazandaran, possibly Evin Prison in Tehran, known for housing political and high-risk inmates. Her daughter's whereabouts are unknown. Some speculate she's with relatives, others that she's in state care, a silent witness to her mother's crimes. Kulthum's case has sent ripples through Iran. Neighbors in Sari, interviewed by local media, describe her as quiet and kind, shocked that the woman who brought them sweets was a killer. Families of her victims, many unaware of the truth until 2023, are demanding justice, though some bodies are too old for autopsies. The case has sparked debates about women's roles in crime, with some arguing Kulthum's gender helped her evade suspicion, others claiming she's a symptom of society that limits women's paths to power. If executed, her death will close a grim chapter, but the scars she left on families, communities, and Iran's psyche will linger. Kulthum Akbari's story is a horror show that doesn't fade when the credits roll. She wasn't just a killer. She was a shapeshifter, turning love into a weapon, trust into a trap. Her estimated 11 to 20 victims, maybe more, represent lives snuffed out, families shattered, and a society blindsided by a woman who defied every stereotype. In Iran, where serial killers are rare, Kulthum stands out, a black widow whose web stretched across 2 decades and 5 cities. Her case has left a mark, though not in the way Western true crime stories do. Iran's media, tightly controlled, doesn't sensationalize like America's, but whispers of the deadly bride have spread, fueling urban legends in Mazandaran. Some compare her to Man Qadiri, another Iranian woman who killed for profit, but Kulthum's scale and cunning set her apart. She's a cautionary tale, a reminder that evil doesn't always look the part. It can wear a veil, pour tea, and smile as it kills. As I wrap this up, I can't shake the image of Kulthum standing over a dying husband, her face blank, her hands steady. It's the kind of scene that haunts you, a glimpse into a mind where love and death are one and the same. She didn't just kill men. She killed the idea of safety, the belief that a wife, a mother, couldn't be a monster. And that, my friend, is what makes Kulthum Akbari the stuff of nightmares.